What up, guys? It's Dom, and welcome back to another movie review. So, beforehand, when we did our X-Men grind in order to finish all of them before Deadpool and Wolverine, I didn't quite finish. Technically, I still had Dark Phoenix and New Mutants to cover. So I'm just going to do that right now. And today we're going over X-Men Dark Phoenix. X-Men Dark Phoenix, released in 2019, written and directed by Simon Kinberg. Jean Grey begins to develop incredible powers that corrupt and turn her into a Dark Phoenix, causing the X-Men to have to decide if her life is worth more than all of humanity. Let's get right into the 10 essential aspects of a movie. The first essential aspect is plot. So the thing with the plot in this movie is that it's the concept and the actual story behind it in general is really, really good. It's really, really interesting, and that's honestly what kept me engaged in this movie. However, I feel like they could have played it out a lot differently. I loved that they had the butting of the heads of the X-Men, kind of splitting them up, fighting each other. That part was awesome. I feel like everything leading up to that point, it wasn't really anything special. The characters their story arc was okay in this movie. Once it got to them actually butting heads and fighting each other, that's when I started to enjoy the movie a little more. And I thought the ending was also stereotypical almost, and it really didn't do what it should have for me. That second third of the movie was the best part, 100%. That was the best part. The beginning and the end, I feel like, was slightly amiss. The second essential aspect is attraction. Now, was this movie entertaining? Hell yeah, I think it definitely was. Seeing heroes fight other heroes and team up with villains just in this whole Civil War fight, like, that's entertaining, especially for a Marvel fan like me. I loved seeing these iconic heroes and villains team up and fight against each other. I thought that was awesome. What wasn't that entertaining was the alien species that they brought in. I feel like that was just a big miss. I did not care for them at all. If they weren't in the movie and it was just Jean Grey got the dark power of the Dark Phoenix on her own and just became Phoenix, that's fine. I would have been fine with that. But no, they had to involve a whole new race of people trying to take over the world. I don't even know. That whole thing was a miss. I really did not care, which it sucks because it pulls you out of the movie when you really don't care about something like that. So I thought the actual movie itself was entertaining, seeing all the mutants use their powers, seeing the teams fight each other, but the biggest plot point, which was the aliens, big miss, definitely pulled me out, not entertaining. The third essential aspect is theme. I feel like the theme of this movie is pretty simple. You shouldn't give up on someone that lost their way. Instead, help them, get them back to where you know they want to be, help them get out of this terrible point in their life, and help them move past it. That's really the whole theme. The fourth essential aspect is dialogue. So I thought the dialogue in this movie was okay. I mean, the conversation between characters definitely felt real. It didn't pull me out. It felt like they were actually talking to each other. The psychic telepathic talking that Jean Grey and Professor X did definitely was still good. That's like the most important part of dialogue that they have in all these movies, because that's the hardest one to do, to really make it feel real, like they actually are talking to someone in their head and not make it look kind of corny. But they actually did do a good job with that dialogue, and the emotional pieces of dialogue were also really, really good in this movie, up until the end. But towards the middle part, that's when they was really, really good. The fifth essential aspect is acting. So the acting, again, it wasn't anything terrible. It definitely felt real. It didn't really pull me out. Maybe Jean Grey a little bit, especially towards the end, it kind of did pull me out. I don't know. It just seemed a little weird, but three main actors in this movie that did a phenomenal job. James McAvoy as Professor X. He's always done good in all these X-Men movies. He knows how to play that character really, really well. He knows how to look the part and also makes you feel like he is actually Professor X with the way he talks, the way he moves, the way he acts. It just fits. And of course, my favorite, Michael Fassbender as Magneto. Probably my favorite Magneto. I don't know why. It's perfect to me. He knows exactly how to portray Magneto's emotions and his whole theme and why he is Magneto. And he did it in this movie as well. He seemed menacing. He definitely had the acting power to play this character to a T. So I'm not even going to have to talk about that anymore. If you want to see me gush over Michael Fassbender, watch the other videos that I have him in. And the third one is Nicholas Hoult as Beast. See, he usually doesn't do the perfect job as Beast like he did in all these other movies, but in this one, he had a bigger emotional value in this movie, and I think he did it well. When he was mad at Professor X, when he was sad, when he was really pissed, it really did feel like it. He did a great job in this movie. I'm glad he did, because Beast is one of the main X-Men. So the fact that he wasn't really played out well in the other movies is disappointing, but at least he did in this one. But yeah, I mean, the acting overall was decent. Those three actors did a phenomenal job, but nothing really to complain about too much. The sixth essential aspect is cinematography. So cinematography is a lot about emotion, and honestly, it's hard because the emotional scenes in this movie, for some reason, even though I love these characters, didn't really do much for me. I don't know what it was. I guess maybe it didn't seem real, or the soundtrack wasn't the best for those parts. I don't know. I just feel like they could have done more with the emotional scenes that they had. They had two really big ones, and neither really got me too emotional. But when it came to actually the scenes and of the cinematography part, how it looks, I think that they did a really good job with the train fighting scene. I thought that scene was badass. It was awesome. I loved watching that. I don't know. That part really, really looked good, along with other parts as well. But that part specifically is what I wanted to talk about. But yeah, with the emotional parts, I think they could have done a lot better. The seventh essential aspect is editing. So this movie is 1 hour and 53 minutes long, and I feel like that's a pretty good length. It definitely didn't hit that 2-hour mark, which is good because I didn't really know how much else they could have done with this story. It could have even been a little shorter, but for what it was, I think that is a good length. I feel like they had enough time to pace the movie well and reach an ending that makes sense. Even though the ending wasn't the best, at least it did make sense with the plot points. So I guess it was paced well. It was 1 hour and 53 is perfectly fine. I don't know. It's really weird. It could be either way. It could be longer, it could be shorter. I feel like it'd be the same. The eighth essential aspect is soundtrack. Now, like I said a little bit in cinematography, the soundtrack for the emotional scenes, I don't really think did much for me. I feel like they could have chosen better ones for there. And throughout the rest of the movie, I honestly don't really remember a soundtrack. I know there was one. There always is a soundtrack for the most part, but just nothing really too memorable that really stuck out. The ninth essential aspect is directing. So the director of this movie was Simon Kinberg, and it was his job to take these previous 8 essential aspects, put them together to make a movie that's worth watching. And I feel like he did. It was definitely worth watching. It was a great continuation of the other X-Men movies in the franchise. I just feel like it could have been a lot better. It was definitely a letdown compared to what it could have been after all these amazing movies. Because this is technically the end, kind of. I mean, Logan was really, really the end, but this is the last X-Men movie that I know of this Fox universe. So it was really a letdown that they're ending off on such a poor note. They could have definitely done way better with the emotional scenes, with the plot points, I don't know why they brought aliens into it at all. I feel like that's kind of pointless, but I don't know. It could have been so much better, so it's just a disappointment that it had to end this way. But I mean, I'm not surprised that it didn't go perfectly because this was actually his first movie that he directed. He directed some afterwards, but up until this point, has not directed any movies. He has produced movies and wrote for movies, but he never directed any movies. So maybe that's why it came out so poor. I'm not sure. And the 10th essential aspect is time. Will Dark Phoenix stand the test of time? I'm not sure. I mean, it came out 5 years ago, and it's part of one of the biggest movie franchises that exist. So that has it going for it. But as a standalone movie, I really don't think that it would stand the test of time because it's just not the best. There's better superhero movies out there that I would watch before this one. So I feel like if this was a standalone movie, not part of the X-Men saga, then I probably wouldn't watch it. So sadly, I don't think it stands the test of time. And if it does, it's just because it's part of that franchise. Now, onto the reviews. The difference between these reviews are nuts. So Rotten Tomatoes critics give it a 22%, Rotten Tomatoes audience gave it a 64%, and IMDb gave it a 57%. Now, as bad as this movie is, it does not belong at a 22%. Get that out of there. I don't know why they thought it would. And between 57 and 64, I think that actually does work because it is a very middle of the road movie. It's a good superhero movie. Definitely better ones out there, but I have seen way worse ones. So I definitely don't think it belongs in 20s for percent, but right in the middle works out well. And finally, the rankings. Where will X-Men Dark Phoenix rank in its year, decade, and in all time? Let's find out, starting with 2019. It's the only movie I've done so far, so it's going to be first, and until I do more movies from 2019, it's going to stay at first in that list. In the 2010s, it's going to be 11th, above Drive and below Kick-Ass. So Kick-Ass is another superhero movie, and it is kind of cringy, but I feel like the plot at least makes more sense than Dark Phoenix. Dark Phoenix did not have a great roll-in start and did not have a good ending. Or it had a good ending, but not as good as it could have been. And I feel like Kick-Ass is just pretty good throughout the whole movie. It doesn't really have any really down, terrible points. Maybe some cringe here, maybe some bad characters here, but it doesn't really affect it as much as this movie. And Drive, it was an okay movie. It was very middle of the road. I feel like this one's right above it. It's not going to be a really big difference. I feel like the plot is similar in both. There's parts in, for example, in Drive, I want to remove the whole mob aspect. That aspect did not need to be in the movie. And the same thing with the aliens in this movie. So both are really, really similar. I just feel like I enjoyed watching Dark Phoenix a little more than Drive. So I'd rather have that higher up on the list. And in all time, it's going to be 20th, above Drive again, and below The Happening. Now, I'm not going to explain why it's above Drive. I just explained that in this previous one. But it's below The Happening because The Happening is a very hit or miss movie. For me, it was a hit. I loved the concept. I loved how interesting it was just to watch this movie. It was entertaining, and it had just, the premise was mind-blowing. So, I don't know. I just thought that movie actually did everything that it was going for correctly, and Dark Phoenix was going for a lot more and didn't really hit a lot of it. So, that movie just did a better job of reaching its goal than Dark Phoenix did. So that's the only reason it's going to be above it. That's all I have for X-Men Dark Phoenix. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you did, leave a like and subscribe, and make sure to comment what movie you want me to review next. Hope you guys have an amazing day. Peace out.